Hi, it's Don Crowther. I bet you that over the last couple of months, you've seen a number of people sending out recommendations that you start putting emojis in subject lines of emails. And what they're claiming is that it significantly increases the open rate on those emails. Want some data? Let's get some data and learn what the data actually says. All right. And by the way, as we do this, it'll give a really good lesson on how to properly structure tests and what to really look for as you do a test. Okay, so here we go. Let's go to the screen capture. All right. This is Search Engine Journal, who did a study in June and July of 2020 on whether or not emojis in email subject lines affect open rates. Okay, 3.9 million emails with emojis and non-emoji subject lines, and here's what they discovered. So I could take you through it all the way in a lot of detail. How about if I just cut to the chase? Okay. So if I'm going to cut to the chase, so basically they're testing putting an emoji at the beginning and at the end. And not only are they looking for whether it affected the email open rate, but they also looked at whether it affected the unsubscribe rate as well as the complaint rate that people make on those emails, okay? Which is really, really important that we keep track of that, because if all you do is look at email open rates, you might actually make a different decision, okay? All right, so I'll just go down here to the summary. Open rate. Basically, it had slightly higher open rates, okay? 11.24 compared to 11.26. When I said slightly, it's slightly higher. Okay. All right. So here we go. 20.34 versus 19.72 with two different emojis. Second thing, click-through rate. So once people open the email and then they get into the email itself, the question is, do they click through at a higher rate? Okay. All right. 11 out of 15 campaigns at a higher click-through rate. Okay. In other words, the emojis got more people to click. All right. So far, those two factors say, okay, maybe it's a good idea. All right. Now let's go and look at this theory of negative sentiment, which basically asks the question, are people who see an email subject line with an emoji in it positively or negatively looking at your brand and what you do? Okay. And what we found is that they really didn't like it. And you get significantly higher unsubscribes when you use emojis in email subject lines. In other words, to get a slightly higher open rate, you risk losing them permanently as a subscriber, which makes me start to question, is that a good idea? Then we get down to the next thing, which is abuse complaint, which basically says when they used emails with emojis in the subject line, they got a significantly higher level of abuse complaint. And the problem of abuse complaint is that when an email shop like Gmail or Comcast or Yahoo gets complaints, they then take down the email sender score for that email sender. And so fewer of their emails get through. So they may not have unsubscribed. It's just none of the emails are actually getting to them. And then he asked, one of the final question is, hey, if you're going to put an emoji in the subject line, should you put it at the beginning or the end? End one. Okay. All right. So conclusion is this. Emojis in subject lines show a slightly lower. Okay. Let's try this. Emojis in subject lines show a slightly lesser open rate, and non-emoji subject lines are preferable. Okay, I'm sorry. That's exactly the opposite of what I said above. I apologize Sometimes I get confused when there's a lot of data here. Okay, so the emojis are getting slightly less subject line. Emails with emojis have a higher click-through rate. User unsubscribes for more or higher for emails that have emojis in the subject line, and users make more abuse reports for emails with an emoji in the subject line. And if you do want to use emojis, placing it at the end of the subject line is the favorable position. All right. So was this definitive? Basically, what he's saying is, number one, it's not a definitive, absolutely never use them. He does say always be testing your subject lines. And then in the end, he says this: my recommendation would always be to be audience focused and consider this above all else. If my client were the Financial Times, I would be very hesitant to test emojis in the subject line. If I was working for Walmart, I would. Okay. In other words, if you care about your brand, you probably don't want to be using a lot of emojis in the subject line. If you don't really care about your brand, hey, you'll probably get slightly higher click-through rate, at least in that process. What I got out of all this is I don't think using emojis in subject lines is a good idea right now. This is just one test, 3 million emails though. And I think it's pretty good data. So there you go. An answer for you. You may not have liked it, but it's an answer. So there you go. This is Don Crowther saying, just go do this stuff.